My name is Ahmad. I was an Imam, a leader in my village, steeped in tradition and duty. To the outside world, I appeared as a paragon of faith, cloaked in the sacred garments of my calling. Yet, behind my stoic facade lay a darkness that suffocated my spirit. In the quiet corners of my heart, whispers of doubt began to stir. What if everything I believed was merely a veil, hiding a harsher truth? It wasn't until a fateful accident that my existence was thrust into chaos. I experienced a moment that shattered everything I thought I knew. In a void of nothingness, I confronted the abyss, where fear and resignation melded into a single, overwhelming sensation. Then, out of that darkness, a blinding light emerged. There stood Jesus, not as a figure of religious dogma, but as a radiant embodiment of love and truth, calling my name and unveiling the prison I had unwittingly built around my soul. In an instant, the rigorous chains of dogma fell away. I understood that my life had been dictated by fear. Fear of defiance, fear of judgment, fear of the very community I had served. A profound realization gripped me. My spiritual journey was never meant to imprison me within the confines of human-made laws, but rather to liberate my heart to seek an intimate relationship with the divine. Upon returning to life, I was met with scorn and alienation, marked as a heretic in the eyes of those I once led. The love I sought from my family turned to rejection. The light I had found ignited a desperate battle within me. Each clandestine prayer for understanding and the courage to explore this newfound freedom was marked by the shadow of impending loss. But I pressed on, driven by a deep necessity to share my revelation. This journey is not just mine. It is an awakening that many are experiencing today. We stand at the crossroads of truth and tradition, where the true nature of our spiritual battles is laid bare. Here, I invite you to walk with me through the depths of this transformation, one that transcends cultural confines and speaks to the very essence of existence. Before we delve deeper, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it? Share your thoughts below. And if you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond to follow more revelations of hope and freedom. The road ahead is fraught with peril, but it is also illuminated by the light of truth. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. In my rural village in Malaysia, life had always flowed like a river shaped by the constraints of tradition. Each day, the call to prayer echoed through the air, a reminder of our duties to Allah and the strict adherence to Islamic principles that bound us together. As a cleric, I held a respected position, but beneath that reverence lay a stifling atmosphere of fear. The community was tightly monitored by austere leaders, individuals whose interpretations of faith left little room for questions or dissent. I was expected to embody the ideals we upheld, but internally, a storm was brewing, a growing discontent that I struggled to voice. It was during a quiet evening of prayer, a moment I had embraced countless times, that everything changed. As I sought closeness to God, a sudden wave of darkness swept over me, plunging me into a trance that felt otherworldly. In that suspended state, I encountered Jesus. He stood before me, radiant and powerful, and as I gazed upon him, an overwhelming sense of calm washed over me. He called me by name, and in that moment, I felt a deep connection transcending my understanding. It was as if all the fear that had gripped my heart for so long dissipated in the brilliance of his light. Jesus spoke to me with a wisdom that penetrated the very core of my being. He revealed truths about our world, truths hidden beneath layers of deception that had governed my life. I was shown how the elite manipulate religion for their own ends, twisting faith into instruments of control. The revelation was jarring, shattering everything I had been taught to believe. I saw the spiritual war playing out not just in society, but within my own heart, where loyalty to tradition clashed with the emergence of a truth I could no longer ignore. I realized how deeply lies had infiltrated our religious practices, leaving many trapped in cycles of fear and confusion. As the vision unfolded, I witnessed the suffering of humanity, people divided by ideologies, caught in conflicts, fueled by those in power. The role that religion played in these separations became painfully clear. It was a tool used to create barriers between us, distancing us from the love and unity that Jesus advocated. The faces of those I knew flashed before me, and I felt the weight of their pain. It became evident that my silence was complicit in this narrative, and the urgency to speak out surged within me. I felt called to awaken those around me, to be a voice for the voiceless, despite the risks and repercussions that awaited me. When I returned to my body, the heaviness of the world settled back in, but I was changed. The tranquility I had felt in the presence of Jesus lingered, fueling a fire within me, a desperate need to embrace my awakening. I understood that to remain silent would be to betray the light I had received, but the thought of confronting my community, of risking everything I held dear, was terrifying. I grappled with the potential loss of my identity, my role as a cleric, and the relationships that had defined my existence. Yet, the journey of awakening was never meant to be comfortable. It demanded courage, resilience, and a willingness to stand against the tide of oppression, even when the stakes felt insurmountable. As I sat alone in my thoughts, preparing for the confrontation I knew lay ahead, the conviction deepened. The revelations I had received required me to break free from the chains of tradition that had bound me for too long. There was a world waiting to hear the truth, a world desperate for the kind of awakening I had experienced. The path would be fraught with danger, and I would face not just the disapproval of my community, but the unsettling uncertainty of walking away from the familiar. But with each passing moment, the call to action grew louder, echoing in the depths of my soul. I knew I could no longer stand on the sidelines. The time had come to take a bold step forward into the light, ignited by Jesus' love and the urgent need to confront the hidden agenda that seeks to ensnare us all. As an Imam at 34, I've always worn my traditional attire with pride, embodying the values my community cherishes. Yet beneath this disciplined exterior lies a deep emotional emptiness, a void I've been unable to fill. The prayers, the rituals, they once brought me solace, but now they feel like heavy chains binding me to outdated norms. I look into the eyes of my congregants, and while they see a respected figure, I see a man wrestling with an internal struggle that's grown increasingly suffocating. The rigid religious expectations weigh on me like a shroud, and I can't help but yearn for true spiritual freedom, a freedom that seems just beyond my grasp. It was during one restless night, when the stillness of my surroundings began to echo the turmoil within me, that my life took an unexpected turn. I awoke in the middle of the night, consumed by a sense of unease. Trying to quiet my racing thoughts, I slipped into a meditative state, hoping to find clarity amid the chaos. As I closed my eyes, I felt myself being pulled into darkness, and then, in an instant, I was enveloped in light. It was a sensation unlike any other, a brilliance that penetrated the shadows of my doubts and fears. In that light stood Jesus, the radiant figure who had always been a part of my teachings, yet felt so distant from my experience. As he looked at me, I felt a deep connection, as if he could see into the very depths of my soul, unearthing the fears and longings that I had hidden away for so long. "Ahmad," he said, calling me by name. Those words resonated through me, carrying an authority that silenced the doubts that raged in my mind. He began to reveal truths that shattered my understanding of faith and spirituality. He took me on a journey, showing me the spiritual war that rages not only outside in the world, but within the hearts of every person seeking connection and truth. I began to see the hidden agenda of the elite, how they twist faith into tools of deception that serve to divide us, allowing power to flourish while humanity suffers. As visions swirled around me, I witnessed the suffering of people caught in the crossfire of manipulation, living lives shackled to ideologies that promised salvation but delivered only despair. I could see the fabric of society fraying at the edges, torn apart by conflict and fear. Jesus made it painfully clear. The spiritual awakening I sought was not just a personal endeavor. It was a call to action for all of humanity. I felt compelled to break free from the constraints of my past, to rise above the dogmas that had controlled me, and to embrace the truth that was being unveiled before my very eyes. When I eventually returned to my physical body, I awoke with an urgency that burned within me. The light of that experience lingered, illuminating my path forward, yet a wave of fear rushed over me. Could I really share the radical truth I had discovered? I understood that breaking my silence could lead to rejection from my family and my community. But the risk of remaining silent was far greater. How could I condone the deception that held so many captive? The thought of my loved ones continuing to suffer under the weight of unexamined beliefs tore at my heart. The conflict within me intensified, driving home the reality that awakening others was both my calling and my responsibility. So I began to prepare for this daunting journey. I knew I had to speak out against the systems that perpetuate deception, the ideologies that prevent true spirituality and connection. I sought to gather those who also felt the stirrings of unrest, the desire for revelation in their own hearts. Each meeting bore the weight of uncertainty, but I was determined. With every person I reached out to, I felt a sense of liberation taking root within me. This was a fight for truth, for love, for connection, and I was ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead, resolute in the belief that Jesus was leading me toward the path of awakening, not just for myself, but for countless others who were yearning for the same light. As I knelt in prayer, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of my village, an unsettling emptiness began to creep into my heart. I remembered a time when each prayer brought me peace, a connection to something greater than myself. Now, it felt like I was merely going through the motions, reciting words that had lost their meaning. I glanced at the faces of my community, all of whom appeared absorbed in their devotion. Yet I felt an overwhelming isolation. Deep inside, I carried questions I felt I couldn't voice, questions about the nature of my faith and the sincerity of my devotion. Was I truly on a path to spirituality, or was this merely a form of control masquerading as piety? These doubts plagued me, and the more I prayed, the more haunted I became by strange dreams. A luminous figure flickered just beyond my consciousness, appearing at the edges of my thoughts. Each night I found myself drawn into dreams that felt more real than reality itself, where this figure radiated warmth and wisdom. I sensed that it was Jesus, and with each encounter, I felt a pull towards something I had long suppressed. I didn't know how to interpret these experiences. Were they a divine calling, or mere manifestations of my internal struggles? The dreams became my refuge and my torment, unclear in their purpose, yet deeply compelling. With every dream, I felt a spiritual awakening stirring within me, threatening to unravel the tightly woven fabric of my beliefs. Each vision offered a glimpse into a world filled with truth, but it also raised profound questions that gnawed at my soul. I began to wonder how many others were caught in the same cycle of unexamined faith, blindly going through the motions while clinging to a version of spirituality that might not be genuine. The thought infiltrated my prayers, filling them with urgency and tension. I couldn't continue living in this state of deception, not only for myself, but for those who looked to me for guidance, trusting that I was leading them down a path devoid of the chains I was starting to recognize. One fateful evening, as I drifted into yet another dream, Jesus stood before me in all his glory. There was no fear in his presence, only an overwhelming love that washed over me like a cleansing tide. He opened my eyes to the hidden agendas that shape our world, showing me how the elite manipulate ideologies and religious beliefs to maintain control. It became painfully clear that our community, along with so many others, suffered under layers of deception disguised as faith. I saw visions of conflict, war, and division, all fueled by a refusal to embrace the truth that Jesus offers. I felt empowered, yet terrified, as the implications of these revelations piled upon my heart. I awakened from the dream with newfound clarity, yet a storm raged within me. What was I to do with this knowledge? The fear of losing my community and the love of my family gnawed at the edges of my resolve. I understood that brokenness lay ahead, if I dared to question the very foundation of my beliefs. Still, a fire ignited in my soul, a call to action, urging me to share the truth I had received. I became acutely aware that staying silent could mean wasting the revelation I had been granted. My mission, once shrouded in personal struggle, had transformed into an urgent need to awaken others from their slumber of deception. And as I gathered my thoughts, the weight of the world felt heavy, yet the truth beckoned me to confront my fears and embrace the path ahead. That evening began like any other, filled with routine and the familiar hum of life in my community. I had spent the day leading prayers and offering guidance, yet beneath that exterior, a profound emptiness gnawed at my soul. I had always been a dedicated cleric, committed to the teachings that shaped my beliefs. But as I drove home, doubts began to coalesce in my mind. Were we serving a divine path, or were we merely participating in a system designed to trap us in our fears? That internal struggle would soon be interrupted by a life-changing event. In the blink of an eye, everything changed. A sudden crash jolted me, and I found myself enveloped in darkness, a stark contrast to the vibrant life I had known. There was no pain, no fear, just an overwhelming void that seemed to stretch infinitely around me. I was lost in this darkness, and for a moment, I thought this might be the end. Yet, as despair began to creep in, I sensed a shift. A blinding light appeared, piercing through the shadows, and in that radiant glow stood Jesus. His presence radiated love and serenity, and as he called my name, I felt every fear evaporating into the air. As I stood in awe before him, I was enveloped in his light. Jesus spoke to me gently, yet powerfully, unveiling the essence of my spiritual conflict. He showed me truths that I had scarcely dared to consider. In his presence, the cozy confines of my faith began to unravel, exposing the contradictions I had long sought to ignore. I saw visions of the spiritual war that waged not only within my heart, but also across the globe. I witnessed the manipulation by the elite, how they used faith as a weapon to control and mislead us under layers of deception. It was a revelation that shook me to my core. The very traditions I had upheld could sometimes serve as instruments of division rather than communion. I could see how the teachings meant to draw us closer to the divine were often leveraged to instill fear and enforce conformity. The stark contrast between the love of Jesus and the rigid doctrines that governed my life became painfully clear. I felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier as Jesus urged me to seek the truth, not just for myself, but for all those still lost in the darkness. As the light began to fade, I realized I was being brought back to the physical world, but I was forever transformed. I awoke in my car, battered but breathing, filled with a sense of urgency that surged within me. The revelation I had received hung heavily over me like a mantle, and as I regained my bearings, I understood that I could no longer stand idly by. The spiritual awakening I experienced compelled me to share this truth with others, to warn them of the dangers of unchecked belief, and to challenge the hidden agendas that surround us. I could feel the weight of my mission pressing down on me as I envisioned the journey ahead, one filled with challenges and obstacles, but driven by an unwavering conviction to enlighten those still steeped in deception. When I came to after that fateful encounter with Jesus, the world felt starkly different. I was alive, Yet the shadows of what I had experienced loomed large, casting a pall over my return. I could still feel the warmth of his light, the truth that had been revealed to me in that divine moment. But the joy of awakening was quickly overshadowed by a harsh reality. My family and community branded me a heretic. The rise of rejection felt like a storm breaking over me, relentless and unforgiving. I had stepped away from the comfort of tradition into a wilderness of isolation, and as whispers of betrayal spread, I became aware of the deep loneliness that accompanied my newfound understanding. Each day, I faced the consequences of my revelation. Conversations shifted into glaring silences, and the warm embraces of family turned into cold stares that pierced through my heart. It felt as if every moment spent within my community was filled with judgment. The very people I once called brothers and sisters now saw me as a threat. Guilt crept in like a thief in the night, leaving me to wrestle with the weight of my choices. Had I betrayed them for a truth that could cost me everything? The fear of estrangement consumed me, leaving me feeling lost and alone. Yet, deep inside, I understood that this path was necessary, not just for my soul, but perhaps for theirs as well. In the dark corners of my heart, I resolved to seek more knowledge about Jesus, hoping to uncover the layers of his teachings and how they might guide me. I began to explore in secret, cautiously watching videos and reading the Bible, absorbing each word with a yearning for understanding. It was a dangerous game, but I felt compelled to pursue this. Awakening, no matter the risk. Each verse opened a door to perspectives I had never considered, and the revelation of truth gradually ignited a flame within me that dispelled the shadows of doubt. I started connecting the dots between my experiences and the larger spiritual war at play, how deception weaved through our lives, manipulating beliefs and instilling fear. My quest for clarity was fraught with tension. I felt the eyes of my community on me, the potential for violence lurking within, their altered perception. Yet, the drive to uncover the truth outweighed the fear. I began to perceive a pattern in the struggles that surrounded me. Society seemed to be plagued by a hidden agenda that thrived on division and control. I realized that I had to stand firm in my beliefs, to wrestle with the truths that had been shown to me. The world outside was rife with leaders who prioritized their power over the well-being of the people. That was the deception I could no longer tolerate. Despite the overwhelming fear of isolation, every piece of knowledge I gained through my clandestine explorations became a lifeline, a whisper of hope amid the turmoil. I yearned to share this truth, to awaken others who remained trapped in ignorance. But as I contemplated outreach, I faced the persistent question lingering in my mind. How? How could I possibly convey these revelations without putting myself, and those I love, at risk? Each contemplation ignited a deep sense of urgency, akin to a drumbeat echoing within me. I knew my fight was not merely for my own soul, but for the souls of those still lost in darkness, and I felt the weight of my mission reaffirmed with every passing day. And so, I prepared to step into this new chapter, fueled by an unshakable conviction, a desire to bring light into the shadows. With each breath, I recognized I was part of something far greater than myself. The awakening had begun, and though fear lingered, it would not dictate my path. The light I had seen in my vision continued to guide me, urging me to rise and confront the hidden agendas that plagued our world. As I stepped into the unknown, I felt the call of Jesus urging me forward. It became clear. While the spiritual war raged all around me, I was ready to become a warrior for the truth, steadfast in my resolve to unveil the deception that threatened our lives, one soul at a time. In the months that followed my encounter with Jesus, I found myself captivated by the Bible. With a fervent curiosity, I delved into its pages, discovering stories and teachings that stirred something deep within me. They resonated with the revelations I had experienced, illuminating truths I had never considered before. I sought these sacred writings in secret, aware that my exploration could lead to dire consequences if discovered. My heart raced with both excitement and apprehension. Each verse offered insight into the reality of our existence, a stark contrast to the rigid dogmas I had grown up with. This journey became my refuge, a place where I could honestly confront my questions and doubts. Connecting with others who had ventured down the same path provided a sense of solace during this spiritual awakening. I found a small group that shared their testimonies with me, recounting experiences that mirrored my own awakening. Our conversations were filled with discovery and understanding. We analyzed scriptures, shared dreams, and reflected on the world's complexity as it lay at our feet. In this newfound community, I finally felt a sense of belonging, a shared mission to awaken hearts that had previously remained entrenched in tradition. But with every moment of peace I found here, the fear of losing my family and cultural identity loomed large. The fear of estrangement from my loved ones gnawed at my conscience. I was torn between the exhilaration of this newfound truth and the heart-wrenching possibility of losing everything I had ever known. I often prayed to Jesus in the quiet of the night, sharing my fears and seeking clarity. "Help me find a way to bring light to those I love," I would plead. My prayers were sincere, flowing from the depths of a heart desperate for connection, yearning for a way to bridge the awakening I had experienced with those who remained rooted in the confines of our tradition. One evening, in the depths of my prayers, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. It was as if Jesus were beside me, guiding my thoughts and soothing my fears. In that moment, the decision grew clearer. I understood that baptism was not just a ceremonial act. It was a profound declaration of my faith and commitment to the truth I had uncovered. It marked my departure from the layers of deception I had inhabited for so long, a new beginning that transcended the fear of loss. I found solace in the idea that my first step into this new light could ultimately lead others toward their own awakenings. When the day of my secret baptism finally arrived, my heart raced with a blend of fear and anticipation. I felt the weight of my past creeping in, but stronger still was the urgency to move forward. Being submerged in water, I felt as if I was washing away not just my old identity, but also the chains that had bound me. Emerging from the water, I was filled with a sense of freedom that was almost overwhelming. In that intimate moment, I vowed to share the revelations that had transformed my life, prepared to navigate the challenges ahead, emboldened by the hope that someday my family might understand, and perhaps even journey alongside me in this spiritual war for truth. In the aftermath of my encounter with Jesus, an overwhelming urgency stirred within me. I could no longer ignore the call to share the truth of my experience, for it had transformed my understanding of reality and illuminated the path ahead. The weight of what I had seen pressed down on my heart, compelling me to speak out against the spiritual war that surrounded us. I realized that my journey wasn't just about personal enlightenment. It was a clarion call to raise awareness, to inspire others to awaken from the slumber imposed by the chains of deception. I felt a divine obligation to ensure that the truth did not remain buried beneath layers of ignorance. As I prepared to voice my experiences, I became acutely aware of the dangers that lay ahead. The very community I had devoted my life to could turn against me, labeling me a traitor for daring to question the teachings that had shaped our collective identity. I understood that speaking out against the hidden agenda perpetuated by the elite could lead to severe repercussions, loss of family, ostracization, and even a threat to my life. Yet amid those fears, I felt a burning conviction that propelled me forward. The truth I carried was too important to remain silent. Silence would be complicity in a spiritual war that sought to keep humanity divided and in chains. Each moment became a battleground, not just for my soul, but for the souls of those around me. I began to reach out to people in my community, sharing snippets of what I had learned, carefully gauging their reactions. It was a delicate dance, fraught with tension as I navigated the fine line between opening their eyes to the truth and risking their wrath. With each conversation, I could see the flickers of awakening spark in their eyes, as they too began to grapple with the inconsistencies in their beliefs. Some listened intently, while others recoiled in fear, unwilling to confront the implications of what I was saying. As I delved deeper into discussions with like-minded individuals, I recognized a growing movement committed to unveiling the deception that permeated our lives. Our conversations revolved around the manipulation of faith and the means by which those in power exploited fear to maintain control. There was a shared understanding among us that a spiritual awakening was necessary. It was our calling to challenge the narratives imposed by the elite and reclaim our connection to the divine. I felt invigorated by the solidarity we formed, yet the fear of discovery loomed over us like a dark cloud. Each meeting felt like a risk, a step further into the shadows, but the light of truth continued to guide our mission. As time went on, my resolve only strengthened. I knew that my voice carried weight. It could either perpetuate the deception or help to shatter it. The struggles of my community weighed heavily on me. Each story I heard of pain and division reinforced my commitment to be an agent of change. The urgency to confront the hidden agenda grew more intense. The realization that countless others were trapped in these same systems became unbearable. I began to formulate a plan to reach more people, to utilize every opportunity to share my testimony and the revelations given to me by Jesus. The day came when I stood before my community, trembling with a mix of fear and determination. I was ready to confront the spiritual war head-on, knowing that truth was on my side. I took a deep breath, preparing to share my journey, a journey filled with love, deception, and a profound awakening. It was time to unveil the truth, to call others to rise against the forces that sought to keep us divided. As I began to speak, I felt the power of Jesus' message resonate within me, driving me forward with an intensity I could not ignore. This was the moment I had prepared for, and the battle for awakening had officially begun. The day I decided to leave my village marked a turning point in my life that I had anticipated for months. With every step away from the familiar streets I'd known for so long, the weight of my decision pressed heavily on me, but along with the pain of departure came an exhilarating sense of liberation. I had shed my name, a name that had become synonymous with the strict religious expectations I could no longer uphold. As I ventured into the vast desert, the warm winds swept over me, invigorating my spirit and filling me with hope for the new path that lay ahead. The desert was both desolate and beautiful, a stark reflection of my internal journey. Each grain of sand felt like a reminder of the burdens I had carried, yet it also represented the vast potential of a fresh start. As I walked, I could feel the shifting sands beneath my feet, symbolizing the changes I was embracing. I found solace in the solitude, where I could contemplate the revelations I had encountered during my near-death experience. It was in this quiet expanse that I resolved to spread my testimony, to aid others who might find themselves lost in the same grips of deception I had once known. The visions I received from Jesus haunted my thoughts, urging me to confront the hidden agendas that manipulate the hearts and minds of so many. I thought of those still shackled by fear and conformity, caught in a web of ideologies that served the elite rather than the truth. My awakening had opened my eyes to the spiritual war that raged around us, a battle for souls disguised by societal norms and expectations. With renewed purpose, I envisioned gathering those who sought the light, equipping them to push through the barriers that kept them from true spiritual freedom. In the midst of my reflections, I couldn't shake the pangs of guilt that arose from leaving my past behind. My family still resided back in the village, their lives entrenched in the traditional beliefs I had once shared. Each memory of my loved ones felt bittersweet. I was driven by a desire to reconnect, to reconcile my past, while also clinging to the hope that they might one day understand the truths that had transformed me. The vision of them awakening to the same realization filled me with determination. I had a profound longing to create a community of support for those transitioning into this new understanding, offering them a safe haven as they navigated their own spiritual journeys. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, I felt an overwhelming sense of readiness wash over me. It was time to move forward, to fully embrace the mission I felt called to fulfill. My heart swelled with anticipation, knowing I was stepping into a role that could shift the spiritual landscape of those around me. I could already envision years down the road. Perhaps I'd be leading others to the same awakening I experienced, impacting lives in ways I had yet to comprehend. With each breath, I felt Jesus by my side, guiding me into the future where truth, love, and connection awaited. It was a journey worth embarking on, and I was finally ready to surrender to the call that had echoed in my heart for so long. As I stand here, sharing this journey with you, I can't help but reflect on the profound shifts that await those who dare to awaken. My experience, it wasn't just a personal revelation, it was a divine call that compels us all to seek the truth that lies beneath the surface of our fears, traditions, and societal norms. Each of us is a thread in a broader tapestry of awakening, intricately woven together by a force that transcends our understanding. We are participants in a spiritual war, and each choice we make ripples across the fabric of existence. In the depths of darkness, I found light. A light that beckons not only me, but each one of you watching today. Are you ready to confront the uncomfortable? Truths that may lie hidden beneath your own beliefs? Do you feel that stirring in your soul, a nudge toward awakening? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your voice matters, and together, we can illuminate the path for others still caught in the shadows. If this message moves you, please consider subscribing to Truth from Beyond and hitting that notification bell. By doing so, you ensure that you stay connected to the ongoing revelations we uncover, truths that may, like my journey, shift your perspective and awaken your spirit. There is so much more to explore, and I promise, what lies ahead could very well change your life. In the next video, we will dive into another compelling testimony, a story of healing that reveals the extraordinary power of faith and connection to the divine. I invite you to join me in this ongoing exploration of truth, love, and awakening. Thank you for being a part of this community. I am Hamza, and as you reflect on your own journey, remember, awareness is the first step toward liberation. Embrace it, and let's walk together on this path of truth. Until next time.